It is here, everybody. This is Taylor Talks Comics, and I have my best comics of 2021 list ready for you. Alright, so these are the best 10 comics that I read in 2021 that were released and published in 2021. Little disclaimer, I did not read every single comic that came out last year. I think that's impossible. But if you had a favorite from last year that did not make my list, please put it in the comments below. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Maybe I missed out on it. Maybe your favorite comic was one I didn't read and I need to catch up on it. I'm going to be having other lists for Best of 2021 on the channel this week as well, so make sure you subscribe and hit that bell to make sure you don't miss any notifications, and please give the video a thumbs up if you like it. All right, so now the preamble is over, let's get into it. So number 10, I have Night Hunters art by Alexis Zirot, story by Dave Baker, and lettering by Robert Negrete. So this was published by Floating World Comics, and as you can see, I'm just gonna show off the covers here. Just amazing stylized comics, awesome artwork. And the reason why I got these in the first place was for the Alexis Zirot art. I have a friend, Ari, who's a huge fan of his, and he kind of pointed my eyes to the series, and I think issue 1 actually came out in 2020, but this was a reprint issue with a new cover that came out in 2021, and the rest of the series came out in 2021. So I'll just flip through the art, talk about it a little bit. Night Hunters is like a Paul Verhoeven-esque cyberpunk comic. Like Paul Verhoeven movies, famous for like RoboCop and Starship Troopers and Total Recall. And this takes place in Venezuela in the year, I think 100 years from now. And it's about an advanced police state. And it came on, like, Floating World Comics is becoming one of my favorite publishers. It's got like a glossy cardstock, and then the paper is like a thicker matte paper. It's not newsprint, but it is matte, which just really makes Alexis Zirot's art pop with the colors too. But it's an advanced police state, so it's kind of like, not post-apocalyptic necessarily, but just like an advanced, like, political drama with some odes to some, like, crazy, like, oh man, dictatorship kind of thing, and the police rule all, and just, you know, comics like Judge Dredd, or like I said, RoboCop, Total Recall, like all those kinds of themes play a part in here, and then you get these really cool characters. And like I said, I came to this for the Alexis Zirot artwork, but what I was surprised by was a story that written by Dave Baker. I think it was so good that, and I was like into each issue, that I've now been seeking out Dave Baker comics to see other stories that he wrote. But it's just really awesome, and I love Paul Verhoeven movies, and it felt so much like that. And like I said, Alexis Zirot, I don't know how Alexis Zirot is not like a go-to cover artist for Marvel or DC right now. I think his art is so stylized and cool, and it just like pops off the page. And if you're walking through a comic book shop and you see one of these covers, I feel like you gotta pick it up. But this is a great series, so that was number 10 on my list. The trade paperback for that just came out recently too, if you're interested in trying out that series. Number 9 on my list was Eniac by Bad Idea Comics. This was written by Matt Kent, art by Doug Braithwaite, and I think colors by Diego Rodriguez. Let me see the credits here real fast. I think they put the credits in here. I just want to make sure I credit everybody properly. Oh, here they are. Diego Rodriguez is the color artist. Later letters by Dave Sharp, and the covers were all. I'm sorry. Color artist was Diego Rodriguez. Covers are by Luis LaRosa. So Bad Idea Comics came in a big way in 2021, known for their kind of crazy marketing techniques, I guess. And I'll talk more about them later. I think in one of my videos later this week when I talk about, I remember like superlatives, like best publisher, most interesting publisher, best artist, best writer kind of thing. And I'll probably talk about what that in there because, a spoiler, though, Bad Idea will fall into one of those categories. A category that maybe I didn't mention yet. But this was their first big series. The first comic they came out with was the Hero Trade, which was like a sneak peek. They sent one issue to every comic book shop kind of thing in late 2020. 2021 was the big year for Bad Idea, and this was their first big series. And it started off with this great issue, and this cover by Luis LaRosa. I mean, how can you not see this in a comic book shop and instantly want to grab it? And then the story by Matt Kent is a story not unlike a lot of Matt Kent stories, where it's like it deals with a lot of espionage, spies, Cold War, politics kind of thing, and very like cinematic in a way is the artwork by Doug Braithwaite. So it's a lot like Matt Kent stories, but I can't get enough of Matt Kent spy stories. Matt Kent can write spy stories for the next 40 years, and I'll snag every single one of them. I think his love for spy movies and spy books and crime and those kinds of things is so apparent in all the stuff that he writes. And he comes up with fresh ideas every time. It's not like he's writing the same exact story. He's just writing a new way of it. He has new things to say about that genre every time, and this is one of them. This Eniac deals with a lot of technology, a lot of kind of like, can sentient technology take over kind of thing? Like, can they develop emotions? And it's like it's total spy thriller. Like every issue, you're opening it and finding out new things and finding new links to people through family and their histories. And it's just an incredible ride and an incredible story. And then in addition to that, the backup strips were all based on the Hero Trade, which were these black and white comics written by Matt Kent, art by David Lapham, who I love from Stray Bullets. And these could have been like backup strips to Stray Bullet issues. They look like it because David Lapham's doing black and white, which is the best way for his artwork, the best way his artwork looks, I think. It's so good. And then it does deal with superheroes, which is, not so much in Stray Bullets stories, but it's not necessarily, you don't see superpowers in action and those kind of things. It's more about like, if superheroes were real, how would society react? And then on top of that, there's an underlying story, underlying kind of thematic metatextual story that Matt Kent's telling that all deal with the comic book culture and those kinds of things. And he said he's going to write an essay on that one day, and I hope he does, because it's amazing. This is the first one that came out. The one I said that came out in 2020, told us the comic book shops, they reprinted it as a backup strip in Eniac 3. And it takes, like, there's a superhero found in a trunk, and this guy's selling off parts of him, like he's cutting off limbs and selling his blood and those kinds of things. And I know Matt Kent in a video said that it's kind of like, he felt like it's kind of like what we do with the comic book industry. Like, it's run by superheroes, it's dominated by superheroes, when the comics can really do so many other things. And we're kind of just like cutting off parts and squeezing the most out of it as we can instead of doing something else. So Eniac and Hero Trade, both my number 9 on my list. Number 8, Deadpool, Black, White, and Blood. If you told me in 2020 that I would have a Deadpool comic in my top 10 list for 2021, I would have thought you were nuts. The Deadpool character, I think the most enjoyment I've gotten out of him is from the Ryan Reynolds movies. Any Deadpool comic I've read, I've either moderately enjoyed or just didn't like very much at all. I haven't read every one of them, so if you think there's a great Deadpool comic based on the things I described today that I should read, let me know in the comments. But if there was a series that Marvel made to get Taylor to like Deadpool, it would be this one. They did it perfectly. This series was so much fun. I laughed out loud multiple times. The artists involved were all fantastic. So the Black, White, and Blood series from Marvel is exactly what it sounds like. They take one character, they do 4 issues, and the only colors you see are black, white, or blood. Now the blood is a little played with. You'll see a lot of red. That's not just blood, but black, white, and blood, black, white, and red in the series reminds me a lot of the Batman black and white series from DC. This is a anthology too, so there's 3 strips in each issue done by a different creative team. So issue number 1 had a James Stokoe strip in it. James Stokoe is one of my favorite cartoonists going today. I'm just gonna flip to the strips that were like my favorite. And there wasn't a bad strip in the entire series, which was kind of crazy. Anthologies usually there's good and bad. All right, so here's the James Stokoe strip. I've showed this off in a previous video where I talked about what James Stokoe's been up to lately. Like I said, he's one of my favorite cartoonists going today. And he just does incredibly stylized artwork that I love. And then issue number 2 had Daniel Warren Johnson doing a strip. This is his cover. That was a James Stokoe cover 2 variant. This is the Daniel Warren Johnson variant. Again, one of my favorite artists going today. Each issue had one of my favorite artists going today. Like I said, Marvel is really trying to push to get me to like Daredevil, and in a big way, and it worked. So this is the Daniel Warren Johnson strip. As you can see, Hulk takes part in it, ripping heads off. Not for the faint of heart. There's Cable. And then you even get some fun strips of, or some fun panels of Deadpool sitting on a couch talking to Daniel Warren Johnson himself, him dancing, him at a comic book shop. Like, it's very kind of meta the way that Daniel Warren Johnson wrote that strip. Issue 3, I wanted the Stan Sakai variant cover, but it was the only one in the series that was a ratioed variant, and it was like $50. I was not going to pay that for a single issue, unfortunately, even though I love Stan Sakai. So this issue, my favorite cartoonist going today was Stan Sakai, and here's Stan Sakai doing Deadpool comics, which is awesome because Stan Sakai obviously famous for Yusaki Yojimbo, and he even includes some samurais. And then the last one, my 4th favorite cartoonist going today that was highlighted in here and on the cover was Mike Allred. So each issue, like I said, had one of my favorite cartoonists going today, and this one also had, who was that? Sanshiro Kasama and Hikaru Yusugi. This is the team that does the Deadpool manga, and those are being reprinted or printed in English for the first time this year by Viz. And I think 2 volumes will be out by the end of March. So I'm looking forward to that because I like this strip a lot. But Mike Allred, he's watching a movie about the ecstatics. Excellence coming out this year too for Mike Allred, can't wait. And it's just Mike Allred's greatness. So they're all 4 stylized artists. They're all 4 artists that you see their style and you instantly can pick it out of the lineup. And they all did great strips. And all the other strips involved in this series was fantastic as well. So that was my number 8. Number 7, Rain Like Hammers by Brandon Graham, published by Image Comics. And the colors were by Alejandra Gutierrez. But everything else was done by Brandon Graham. So this is Rain Like Hammers. I'll show off the covers here. This is a 5-issue series that came out last year that I loved. and it really made me fall in love with Brandon Graham's work, and I've since sought out a lot of the other stuff. Like King City was one of my favorite comics I read last year, but it didn't come out last year, so it's not making this list. But Brandon Graham has this like wild and crazy style that's like, you see a lot of Mobius in his work. I think that's one of the more obvious homages, but he really pushes the medium and what you can do with comics. It's not your traditional panel layouts at all in any means. It's not your traditional storytelling. Like in this one, he's getting these signals from afar, and he's still trying to figure out where they're coming from. And you'll see that pattern played out later in the series as well. So the series starts off. Issue 1 was like such a wild beginning, because you read issue 1 and then you read issue 2 and it takes you different places that you think it's going. So issue 1 was about this guy being isolated, very much made you think of like the quarantine and COVID and those kinds of things, but I don't think that was the inspiration. I think Brandon Graham talks about it in the back of this issue, actually, that was kind of a weird coincidence to him. But you deal with a lot of isolation, advanced technology, and the world building. World building is a buzzword that gets tossed around a lot. But I feel like there's multiple ways to do world building. One way is to this like directly tell you A, B, and C. Okay, this is how this world works. This is what this does. This is what this does. Brandon doesn't do that. He immerses you into the world in a way that you just instantly understand what's going on and how things work in a way that I can't think of another current day cartoonist that can do that so well. Like there's not any sort of exposition of like, okay, this is why he's eating this. This is why he's doing this. This is how this world works. Nothing. It's just like, you just read it, you're along for the ride, and it all makes sense. Like there's no sort of like barriers or hoops you have to jump through to understand things. Like I said, there's that messaging coming across in a bigger way. Just a fantastic series, but like I said, issue 1 was all about isolation and technology kind of introducing you to the world, but then it expands into this crazy world of like kind of like spies and espionage mixed with mystery and just craziness. It's a must read for people that want to be introduced to Brandon Graham. I think King City might be the better gateway comic if you're trying to get into Brandon Graham comics, but you can't do wrong with Waiting Like Hammers. Number 6 is Ultra Mega by James Herron and Dave Stewart. So, as you can see on this list, I really do appreciate comics that are done by like a smaller team, 1 or 2 people. I think you just get less cooks on the kitchen, and I think you get a more centralized, more focused storytelling that way. But this is Ultra Mega. These came out in these thicker single issues. They were each like, I think, $7.99 a piece, maybe, or $6.99. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're like 72 pages, so you get your money's worth. But this is Ultra Mega. I'll show off the covers here. That's issue 2, 3, and 4. So I love kaiju comics, kaiju movies, and that kind of thing. I love tokusatsu, like Power Rangers, Kamen Rider, those kinds of things. This story includes all of that in the best way. I should have mentioned too, Russ Wooten is the letterer, Dave Stewart does colors, and then the artist and writer is James Herron. And those are all, like I said, tokusatsu, kaiju, those are all presented in a great way in this alternate universe where kaiju monsters exist, and people just like that's like the natural disasters that people have to face on a daily basis. Instead of like tornadoes, earthquakes, it's kaiju monsters. And there's also these giant Ultraman type tokusatsu characters that fight them. And this is, like I said, kaiju tokusatsu, and it's drenched in horror and gore and violence with an amazing story. Like this scene right here, you get this father, son, and mother dealing with things. This is the main character here, and he's the one that grows up in the Ultraman character. A great sequence there. But when he shrinks down, it's like not the exact size he's supposed to be. So there's like some issues there. It's not, nothing works perfectly. Nothing goes as planned. Like just look at that image. James Herron is insane with his artwork. This was my first James Herron comic that I read, and I instantly sought out Rumble from him and John Arcudi because of it. So that was issue 1, and you just go along for the ride, the whole series. And apparently it's not done. Apparently James Herron's going to do it more. This was released in trade paperback this year in 2021, or last year, sorry, that you can pick up. I'm just gonna collect them in singles and then wait for a giant hardcover because Kaiju comics deserve to be in giant deluxe hardcovers, and I hope that happens for Ultra Mega. That was number 5 on my list, right? 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4, yep, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, number 5 on my list is Beta Ray Bill by Dana Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer, the aforementioned Dana Warren Johnson. I have a whole video just on this series alone. Beta Ray Bill is the character that was created by Walt Simonson and his amazingly hyped up Thor run, and this is Dana Warren Johnson reintroducing that character for the current run that Donny Cates is doing for Thor. And this series is just Dana Warren Johnson doing what he does best. Incredible lettering, incredible action, incredible stylized artwork, and it's Beta Ray Bill dealing with a lot of insecurity and self-doubt as he tries to seek out his next big weapon. Stormbreaker's gone, and he's trying to seek out this epic sword that's going to be his new weapon of choice. And I love this because Dana Warren Johnson includes a lot of his own favorite things, his own inspirations. Like this one has a lot of ping pong themed from the Ping Pong comic book by Taiyo Matsumoto. Look at this spread right here. That could be a poster. Just the cutout of his ship. And yes, Scourge disappears. So it's like a ode and a love letter to Walter Simonson Thor, love letter to Japanese pro wrestling. You see a Rainmaker here from Kazuchika Okada from New Japan Pro Wrestling. You get, and then love letters to things like Taiyo Matsumoto. So it's all of Dana Warren Johnson, all of his inspirations and things that he loves, and he's like infusing it into this Marvel comic, which is crazy. That's kind of what I love about these, like I said, these series where it's by 1 or 2 people, is that you get those inspirations in a more focused way, and you get to see them in a more apparent way, and it's a lot of fun. Number 4 on my list was Red Room by Ed Piskor. So Red Room, that's issue 2. I think this is issue 3. And a free comic book day issue, and then issue 4. And also great variants from Jim Rugg, who's one of my favorite cartoonists going today, where he did, each cover was an inspiration of a different independent comic. So this one was 8 Ball by Dino Klaus. This one is Love and Rockets. I had to pick those up because I love those 2 comics. Red Room, though, hit in a big way. It's a horror comic. It's splatterpunk. It's gory. It's violent. It's not for everybody. I will say that. However, it's for me, and I love it. I think Ed Piskor, I've liked his work for a long time now. I loved WYSIWYG. I loved Hip Hop Family Tree, and I loved X-Men Grand Design. However, this is Ed Piskor taking his artwork to another level. His artwork has improved so much over this series that it's insane. Like, his figure drawing has improved. The realism of his artwork has improved, but it's still like this stylized. You can still pick it out of a lineup and know that it's Ed Piskor's artwork, which I love. So Red Room is about the dark web. And the dark web, instead of people selling guns or porn or any sort of weird things like that, they instead murder people online. So it's the whole thing And I think issue 1's an oversized issue. It's 64 pages. The rest of them are your typical 32-page comics. And I think it really picks up in issue 2. So if you read issue 1 and you can stand the gore, like it wasn't too much for you to stomach, please read issue 2 and keep going, because issue 1's a lot of, you can tell Ed's working out the world. He's trying to figure out how things work. The artwork's amazing, but issue 2 is when the writing takes it up a notch and matches up with the art, and the world building is just crazy. So one cool thing is each issue is self-contained. You can read it, you can pick up any one issue, it doesn't matter what number it is, and read it and be satisfied, get a complete story, kind of like the old Silver and Bronze Age comics of yesteryear. But on the dark web, people will pay via cryptocurrency to see people get murdered in their own kind of violent ways. Incredible lettering too. So if you're having a bad day, you can go on this in the dark web and pay to see people get brutally murdered, and you pay via cryptocurrency. But that's not just that's like the premise. The story is really about who are the people committing these murders, because they're all like these crazy superhero design characters. Like, they don't have superpowers, but they're all these great character designs. So who are the people committing these murders? But then also, who are the people paying for these? And then also, who are the people investigating to try to figure out and put a stop to this madness? So there's just a great story to be told there through all of that. And there's also this Free Comic Book Day issue, which was probably the most ambitious Free Comic Book Day issue that came out last year as well, because it's all a brand new story. There's 3 different strips in here that Ed tells of various characters that previously appeared in other issues, but also one character I think appears in issue 4. And just like fun ways to tell stories too in comics. Like, you can tell that Ed's really experimenting with not just the art, but the way of storytelling. I'll probably do a separate video on this too. There's the first color comic that's based on kids, and then and it's like a kind of a Halloween issue. So it's like, again, Ed experimenting with these almost like Peanuts stylized characters, kids characters. Even had a cool wraparound cover. That's probably my favorite character right there. But yeah, so Red Room is my number 4 comic of 2021. Number 3 was Chartwell Manor. This is published by Fantagraphics, and so is Red Room. I should have mentioned that. This was Glenn Head's memoir, Chartwell Manor, and this one has this incredible book design too. There's a glimpse of like Glenn Head's, if you've seen Glenn Head's artwork from like the 90s and stuff, like that's the kind of stuff you'd see. And it does take place in this book. You see some of that, but this is a different Glenn Head book than what he did in the 90s. This one's a lot more personal and visceral and heavy. I mean, there's not a better word to describe it than heavy. So this is a memoir based on a true story of Glenn Head and what he dealt with. So Glenn Head, like I said, he's an underground cartoonist, been around for a long time. He's done a lot of cool stuff. He's become one of my favorite ones. I loved Chicago. I loved Snake Eyes. I loved, what was the anthology he did? I can't remember. I can't think of the name now. But I love all of his work. He again, a stylized cartoonist. You can pick out Glenn Head figures, Glenn Head artwork out of a lineup. And this one was all done by him, all lettered, drawn, everything was done by him. And it tells the story of his 1 year that he spent in Chartwell Manor in the 70s. And he was 13 years old. This was a boarding school his parents sent him to because his grades were not up to snuff, I suppose. And this main guy, the guy that ran it, Terrence Lynch, he's from England, and he made the kids call him Sir, and like I said, this is a heavy story. He was eventually convicted of over 100 counts of sexual assault, and there were 14 victims in the conviction that were named because he would sexually assault and molest the children that attended the school. So that's the premise of the story, but the story is told in such a incredible way by Glenn Head that it tells you, like, it starts you off. Glenn's older, he's listening to the records, and he kind of has like this flashback, and he tells you the whole story of what his experience was like in Chartwell Manor, and the people that he encountered there, other kids, other teachers, and then it kind of tells you the aftermath, which is where the story really gets interesting, because while he's attending there, he goes home on weekends or for breaks maybe, and he struggles to tell his parents what's going on there. His parents are like, he seems upset, but he's not talking. I don't know what's going on. This incredible cartooning too. What a great motorcycle. He's an amazing cartoonist. But so he struggles in real time to tell his parents what's happening, but he also struggles with identity and where he's coming from. He's trying to figure out trying to understand how all the other kids are interacting or understanding what's going on too. It's like that moment if you ever felt like, am I the only one that's crazy here? Like, this is not right? Like, so you get a lot of those moments. But the aftermath of it all, when he finally comes home and he starts to deal with a lot of his issues. So there's a lot of themes that run through this entire story. You get a lot of mental health issues, a lot of depression, a lot of addiction, a lot of trauma from abuse. All those things are not explained, but they're all commented on. And you see them all that are apparent. And you don't necessarily see a resolution to much of any of it. Not that there is a easy resolution to those things anyways, but like you'll see Glenn go and meet up with one of his classmates from that day, and he'll be like, man, he's messed up in a big way, and you kind of have to surmise, like, is that because of the trauma that he dealt with from back then? And you just see how each person kind of dealt with it, and then how they went along with it. And that includes Glenn's mom and dad, how they deal with it, because eventually you'll see within the story, Terrence Lynch is convicted and arrested for these crimes. And his parents, who suspected things happened back then, they talk about how they thought it was just kind of like corporal punishment kind of things. They didn't know it was sexual in nature. So they kind of they're kind of feeling guilty, but they don't really talk about it because it's like a tough subject and they don't want to talk about it. Glenn eventually, here's some of that stylized Glenn Head artwork that's just amazing. I don't know how he does it. I love it though. They don't know how to talk about it. He confronts him a couple times about it, and he just realizes that they're both going to deal with it in different ways. Is that satisfactory or not? You'll have to find out. Is there closure to the story? Well, I mean, in a way, this comic's kind of the closure to the story. Not that Glenn says that, but I'm sure this was healing for Glenn to confront, because he talks about within the story too, his comic book artwork and stuff was a lot of this crazy kind of like out there stuff that wasn't necessarily personal and like heartfelt, I guess, in a way. Like it was maybe to him, but it wasn't accessible in a heartfelt kind of way to anybody else. But this story was, and you talk about it within the comic, like he's like, yeah, that's a story I could tell, but I don't really want to because it's not the kind of comics I do. But obviously he did, eventually. Here's pictures of Glenn Head. And he did it in this comic, and it's an incredible comic. Those are some trigger warnings I would say would be depression, mental health issues, sexual abuse, like all that is included in this comic. So if those are triggers for you, I would be hesitant, maybe avoid this. But I think it is healing in a way. Kind of, if that's something you've dealt with, maybe this is something you could read and realize that you're not alone. I don't know. But it was amazing for me to read. It was super, super heavy. Crazy, awesome comic book, though, from Glenn Head. I hope he continues to make comics. Number 2 on my list is Unsmooth number 2, Bum, from E.S. Glenn. This comic book was published by Floating World Comics, and E.S. Glenn is becoming one of my favorite cartoonists going today. I will pick up anything he comes out with now. But this was his second effort into the Unsmooth series. Unsmooth 1, I believe, came out in 2020. But if not, this came out, though. And Unsmooth is a crazy series. It's like E.S. Glenn took everything I love about comics and packed it into this one series. And I hope that he continues to make Unsmooth comics. But like I said, whatever he comes out with, I'm gonna buy, because his way of storytelling and his way of drawing and his artwork and just like the fun things he includes within the story are all things that interest me in comics. I think he's truly moving the medium in a great way, and cartoonists that move the medium are ones that I want to support and pick up their stuff. So there's a lot of, like, it's hard to explain Unsmooth without you just reading it, and I kind of implore people to just pick it up and read it. This is like an 85-page comic. It's only $15. You can buy it on Floating World's website, or any other independent comic book. It's 85 pages, but it is oversized. You will spend quite a bit of time reading this just because the artwork's amazing, and you're going to sit with each page and kind of like admire it. So you're going to get your money's worth, is what I'm trying to say. But it's kind of hard to explain. There's a lot of like meta elements where it's like stories within stories, comics within comics kind of thing. And maybe part of it is semi-autobiographical as well. You don't know, and that kind of ambiguity is amazing to me as well. Like if you follow E.S. Glenn on Instagram and that kind of thing, you'll realize that he's kind of this character within the story, but he's not out here shooting people that we know of. No, just kidding. But there's also these elements of like, there's anthropomorphic characters too. Obviously those don't exist, but they do in the story. And like I said, there's comics within comics. So here, like on this page, just showed an example. This character here is reading this comic book, and the comic book he's reading is right here. And you can see that the character may be the same person. And then you get this comic book here. You can see like the hands holding it. And the very next page, you see who's holding that comic book. It's this guy. And that's the comic he's reading. So a lot of those kind of cool things. And then like, it looks like a straightforward crime comic, right? A very cool, hip looking, rad comic. But then you see like this cosmic level of cartooning that he does over here, which is just insane. And great character designs too. Every character stands out. Like this could be a black and white comic. Just the same. I love the coloring. I'm just saying like, it could be a black and white comic where you would have no qualms with knowing who is who. I think that's one of the issues with black and white comics. Sometimes characters look the same, but these are all stylized character designs that you would be able to pick them out of the lineup. And then there's these elements too where this is a series of photographs that are all ripped up and torn and placed on the page you're reading. So it's kind of like that meta thing you're dealing with here. And I like how there's like even shadows to show you that it is laying on the page, that these aren't just ripped up panels, that they're actually photographs within the story that the character's looking at. So there's a lot of cool stuff like that. You eventually do get, and that's not a lot, don't worry. I know people sometimes hate prose in their comics, but it's just very quick little poetry. And these cartoons, these little one-panel gags are kind of funny too. So that's like some of the pages are laid out like Sunday strips. Some of them you get like one-panel gags. Some of them you're laid out like, 4-page comic strips. And then it's laid out like a comic book, all rolled into one, all telling one story. And it's just amazing. And this guy's then reading this manga right here, which then appears later on in the comic. And then we're not done. We get this anime that this guy's watching with subtitles. And this character looks a lot like the E.S. Glynn character. Just such fun comics that is so much going on, and you're along for the ride. And then you get like comic book sketchbooks. This is within the comic. This is not like back matter, where like the story's done. This is within the comic. This character's sketching out these characters for this comic, which is an element of comic books that you see sketch character designs and that kind of thing. So just incredible stuff. And I posted this on my Instagram, and you get this old Sunday strip in here. And E.S. Glynn said he's working on another comic that he didn't tell me what it was, but he said he's hoping to release it by the end of this year. And I hope he does, because his stuff is awesome. Number 1, we're finally here. Number 1 on the list, it couldn't have been anything else. It's Monsters by Barry Windsor-Smith, published by Fantagraphics in this hefty tome of a hardcover. 30 plus years in the making. This comic book is amazing. Amazing tour de force of cartooning and mastery. This is Barry Windsor-Smith's magnum opus. I think I've always felt like Weapon X, the origin story of Wolverine, was like underhyped. Like, people love it for the artwork and stuff like that, but the story itself, I feel like, should have been on the level of like Dark Knight Returns or Watchmen for Marvel. And I can't wait to get the gallery editions coming out soon, by the way. Because Barry Windsor-Smith is such a great storyteller. The art is obviously amazing. You can't say enough about the artwork just looking at it. But the storytelling is amazing too. And the story about this comic book and the existence of it had me so hyped for it. Coming out, Gary Groth did an interview with Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg talking about how, like, this originally was supposed to be a Hulk comic, Incredible Hulk from Marvel in the 80s, I think in the mid-80s, right around the time that Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen were coming out. He had the story of telling Hulk's origin, kind of like the trauma that he dealt with as a child and how that eventually related to his anger issues as an adult, which then would tell you why the Hulk comes to be. Marvel said no to it. Bill Mantlo eventually allegedly stole it for his own comic book issue. And then Barry Windsor-Smith took this, reworked it, and has been shopping it around like ever since and kind of reworking it ever since. So it's not a Hulk comic anymore. It's so much more than that. But you get so many themes of trauma, of anger management issues. And I had this bookmarked for some reason. I don't know what I was trying to show off. Maybe just... I don't know what I was trying to show up on the page, but you get a lot of trauma, anger management issues, and you get these little journals in here too that are written in cursive that tell part of the story as well. But then there's also spies and espionage, because it starts off with a super soldier kind of experiment within the military, and then it goes wrong. They pick up this guy out of a lineup that people aren't going to miss, so to speak. And then it goes awry, and then there's more than one monster in the story. And are they monsters for being grotesque, or are they just monstrous human beings? You will have to find out by reading the story. But it's over 350 pages. Incredible cartooning, incredible story that's going to sit with you forever. You're not going to be able to read this comic and not think about it for years to come. And it comes in this hefty, beautiful hardcover designed by Jacob Covey, that published by Fantagraphics. It's only $39.99 and well worth the money. But that's my number 1 comic for 2021. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below if you're going to pick up any of these based on my recommendations. or if you have read these comics and what you thought of them. And like I said, let me know in the comments below too what your favorite comics of 2021 were. Something that didn't make my list, maybe something I need to look out for. And yeah, thank you guys. Looking forward to 2022, and like I said, I have more videos this week about other favorites of 2021. So make sure you subscribe. Thanks.